Okay, because it's been about 2 years since I've done these, and I'm broadcasting from Evanston, Illinois, right near Northwestern. So we're just getting back into it and come over here. Everyone meet Elliot. He's the technical guy, and he's getting us through all this. First of all, thank you all for joining the Card Program Management Basics. This is the first of 3 webcasts I'm doing in September. The reason I'm doing this, number one, it's my passion. Number two, it's a way for credit unions to learn from their office. So I'm going to be trying to cram 2.5 days of a credit card school into 3 separate webinars. And I want to focus on a lot of the highlights. We're going to have a lot of interaction, providing you respond. And I want people to ask questions as we're going along. We've got some polls, we've got some handouts, but I want to make it really interactive. And please don't think any question would be too silly. So I need to come over here, and I don't look like that anymore, as we all know. That was 10 years ago. Um, but no, I don't want to play it again. There we go. Card Program Management Basics. So we'll probably spend about an hour on this session, and I want to cover the highlights of the best parts of managing a card program, some of the income, expense, product structure, fixed rates versus variable rates, um, some basic operational things. And at the end of the webinar, there will also be a to-do list. Now, those of you that signed up for all 3, and even the 2 this morning, you know who you are. I actually mailed, can you see this? The cardiology manual. Hopefully you've all received them by now, the ones that registered for all 3. So know that a lot of the information in this webcast is going to be throughout the most recent cardiology manual. So without any ado, we will get started and talk about what we're going to talk about. Are you offering the members the right product? What the best credit union card programs have in common? Some are really good and some are not so good. The single most important aspect to profitability. Hope we've got some finance people in here because I'm going to have a great debate with you. Card processing options, whether you're full service and in-house, and what the differences are, and structuring your organization for success. A quick overview on portfolio growth strategies and some formulas that you should be tracking and measuring every single month. Marketing and awareness strategies, and at the end there'll be a summary with the key statistics for your portfolio. And I'm also including, and I've never done this in a webinar before, I'm including for everybody a spreadsheet that, how can I explain this? It's a data sheet that I use where you may have multiple programs with your processor, and it's a way to break everything down into 2 or 3 pages of an Excel sheet that can basically become the marketing guidelines for your card program, and will identify the strengths and weaknesses within each category. And that's another thing we're going to talk about, is how marketing needs to really understand the analytics before they go off on their marketing journeys. So I did want to start this off with a quick update. Some of these things are relatively new. If you have not heard by now, we've had some acquisitions and consolidation. Fiserv has purchased First Data Resources, and First Data Resources is utilized by PSCU, WorldPay, and Co-op Full Service. And then on top of that, we have FIS that acquired WorldPay. So if you have any questions about any of these, type them in. And I want to get, this is where we want to do one of the polls and see who's who, and want to find out if you're full service or pass through. It is the one about processing platform. That's it. So we're going to do this poll, and if you would just fill that out, give me an idea what kind of processing platform you're open or you're on. Are the results in?
Coming in live here.
Okay. All right. They can see the poll, right?
Yes.
Great. So 54% of you are full service, 46 are in-house. So what this means for those of you that are full service, and this really only applies to you, and this is all allegedly, I'm going to use that infamous word, allegedly. Fiserv now owns First Data, obviously, and what's going to happen with PSCU, Co-op, and WorldPay? Well, now we know WorldPay has gone to FIS, so they're out of that mix. PSCU and Co-op. My biggest concern was the First Data system is really, really a good system. But I have been assured, many of you who use the PSCU and co-op platforms, they have their own system built around what they call, I guess, a glove around the processing system. And that in their mind, should Fiserv decide to take everybody off of First Data, and put them into the Fiserv platform, that the processors have built enough of a glove that it doesn't matter who is ultimately behind the scenes. For those of you with WorldPay that's been acquired by FIS, and allegedly, that at some point you will be coming off the First Data system and going over to the FIS system. I would imagine that would take a couple of years. Does anybody have any questions on that? Any questions coming in? And the question is, what implications or pricing changes do you think PSCU member owners? It's a good question. I can't foresee there being any pricing differences per se. You've got the contracts with them. We're going to discuss expenses within this presentation as well and what you should be paying per account. But as far as I know, your contract with PSCU as it is, that pricing stays in effect until the end of the current term. And then hopefully in a couple of years, it's going to take a couple of years, all of this will get sorted out. But my understanding is everything is business is as usual currently. So that's that for that. If there are no other questions, and moving right along. Okay, this is the other big thing that's been happening. The Apple Card. Where's mine? Where's mine? I got my Apple Card. Comes in this nice little passport, and you open it up, and there's my card. And I'm just going to drop it on the table to see if you guys can hear. I mean, it is a really thick, heavy card. And if you look here, there's no account number on it. And you look on the back, there's nothing on the back. No, no cardholder service number, nothing. But see if you can hear this. It's like hearing a pin drop. Hold on. Did you hear that? I mean, this thing is heavy. But I want everybody to see the Apple Card commercial. I don't want people to get in a fuss about this. It is not that great. I had a school in DC last week, and I used it for check-in, and it was declined. There were 3 people in the session. Theirs had been declined. And we're going to go through some articles. And yes, it's shiny and new, but just watch this commercial for a moment. Elliot's going to take it over. This is what everybody is seeing these days. Okay, so we're back. So going on, when this first, it just rolled out a couple of weeks ago. Oh, there we go. Here's some recent Apple Card headlines. The Apple Card is more of an experience than a reward generator. CNN, Apple warns not to keep its credit card by leather or denim or loose change. Google, this is pretty new. Google could be tracking your Apple Card purchases. Not could, it's going to be would. The Apple Card may not be as private as you think. I love this one. The Apple Card is a beautiful baby bird and should be handled as such. An Apple Card, what's helpful and what's hype. Let me click on, which article do you want to see? Let's go on the beautiful bird one. If I click on that, is the article going to come up?
It's working on it. There we go.
Here we go. So here's from the Washington Post. The Apple Card is a beautiful baby bird and should be handled as such. Again, if it comes in contact with leather or denim, the interaction could cause permanent discoloration that will not wash off. And it's basically overall, it's not all that it's meant to be. So I just want everybody to understand that. And when I interrupted the video and said that the fees, a lot of you may not know, you may or may not know, back in 2010, I worked for Susie Orman, the money lady, and she was wanting to come out with a credit card. And after I left, that's a whole nother long story. I left by choice. She came out with Susie Orman's money card. And yes, it was going to be a no fee card. Well, guess what? It lasted less than a year. When we get through this webinar, there is no way that Goldman Sachs will be able to maintain this model. And I'll explain how all of the income allocations work for credit unions versus those with banks. And banks, their profitability model is very different from ours. You'll see it in the next few slides, but they're not going to make money on interchange. I do know that they are giving this to subprime consumers. So they are out there giving huge credit lines. They're taking huge risks. They're going to have high charge offs. My personal opinion, it's going to die down very quickly. If I get out of this, do I just X this?
Just click on the black bar next to it, just anywhere here.
Okay. Now, the other thing I want to show you is in the handouts. Are they able to see the handouts?
Yeah, there's a they can
Click on the handout on your page that says how your Apple Card application is evaluated. I printed this out for everybody to have. This was actually obtained from the Apple website, and it shows that you've got to have an iPhone. You've got to contact cardholder service through your iPhone. A lot of it is riding on that. And call me old, I'm 56. There's nothing simpler, in my opinion, in pulling out a plastic and swiping it than trying to figure out, oh God, what button do I have to push it on the cash register or the reader. And the other thing that I recently found out is Apple Card does not and will not work with personal financial management software like Quicken or Mint, and they have made that a conscious choice. So take, for example, people who like to track all their spending on one of those programs, they're not going to be able to download the transactions. So when you're wanting to do your taxes at the end of the year or do your budget, it's kind of hard to do it when this one card is being left out of the entire equation. So the Apple Card fine print, no annual fee, no late fees, no penalty fees, no foreign transaction fees, no mega bonuses. You do get 2 to 3% daily cash back. It shows up on your phone, and they put it on another card, your Apple Card or your Apple Cash card. And then the APRs range from $12.99 to $23.99, and they're variable. This model cannot last. I've been doing this too long. If you have any questions, just keep posting them. I want to talk about the credit card landscape going into 2019. Now, 62% of all credit unions in the United States offer their own programs to their members. This does not include some of the other credit unions that have sold their programs to banks like Envision, Ent Credit Union. Um, these are credit unions that own the loan. So kudos to you. Um, we have 3,320 credit union card issuers in the country, 61.8 billion in card loans. And last year, card loans for credit unions, according to NCUA, which is where I get all my data, grew 7.7%. And I've listed also the previous years. 2017 was 9.3, 7.9, 2015, 6.1. When I do my credit card schools, like the one just last week, and I did one in Nashville in May, more than 2/3 of the class did not have growth. And even though you have had growth, I'm going to show you a formula later on to find out whether it was true loan growth or just you're treading water because of finance charge and fee income. You will hear me talk a lot about the card loan to total loan ratio. And for those of you who may not be aware, I worked with Rex Johnson a lot back back in 1985 when he hired me at Baxter, and I stayed with him all these years. Um, and we came up with a way to truly measure a credit union's loan portfolio. Now, many credit unions and the processors continue to focus on number of accounts and penetration. I'm going to show you throughout this session why that is not a good idea. And basically, we want to establish goals based on what makes us money, which is loans, versus what costs us money, which is number of accounts. And keep in mind ah, our profitability model is very much different from banks because we are loan based. We want the loans. Yes, it's a payment tool, but that's secondary to the loan balances that we need to get on our programs. So keep that in mind. The average card loan to total loan ratio, just because it's 6.3% nationally, that's not the best. Ideally, regardless of what the average is, you want to be at 10 to 15% of your total loan portfolio should be in credit cards. Now, when you look at unsecured loans overall, 25% of your loan portfolio should be unsecured loans, and how you split that up between credit cards, overdraft protection loans, personal loans is up to you. I've got one client who they don't even do the other unsecured loans, they just do credit cards, and they have 40% of their loan portfolio in credit cards. Not everybody wants to do that, it's not everybody's cup of tea. This is something that I put in my latest manual. And for those of you who may not be aware, and I say this at my schools, never, ever, 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 ever pay for data analysis. It is all out there. And I'm going to give you the resources so that you know that you have it. It's all out there for free on the internet. You just have to know where to look and who to trust. But I have found this from Experian, and I just kind of thought it was interesting, where they put the concentration of credit union consumers across the country, with the highest concentration being Utah, Alaska, Idaho, Washington, and Hawaii. The lowest, New Jersey, West Virginia, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Kentucky. I think this can be very helpful if you're in one of these states to know, if your numbers aren't where they need to be, this could be perhaps part of the reason. Some more recent headlines from the ABA that, and this is the Banking Association, American Bankers Association, more cardholders paying their balances in full. Just over 30% now of all cardholders pay balances in full. There's a number of reasons for that. When debit cards got rid of their reward programs, most debit cards got rid of their reward programs probably about 8 or 9 years ago. The consumers started shifting their behavior back to credit cards, pay it in full, use their credit like debit so they can still get their rewards. 44% of cardholders still carry balances, and the share of transactors, according to creditcards.com, is the highest that it's been in 10 years. And that's typically around 40 to 50% of a portfolio. Are there any questions coming in? Okay. Here's some more statistics. Revolvers tend to be 44%, transactors 30%, dormant, we're going to talk about that, 25%. Again, this is bank numbers, not necessarily credit union numbers. I've got the credit union numbers later on. Now, some of the things regarding what the best run card programs have in common, and I have been doing this, I've owned my business since 2003, and I've worked with over 800 credit unions. But basically, when you've got the commitment from management from the very, very top that we're going to push cards, we're going to take the risk, we're going to tolerate the high charge-offs, and another successful aspect that you need to have is to have somebody be a product owner. Those programs that are a part of lending or a part of operations or everybody has their hand in it tend to be the ones that I see do not have strong growth, do not have the proper statistics as far as strong numbers within their portfolio, and their profitability is not always there because the program's just kind of out there. Last week, seeing some of these titles change from card program manager, payments program manager to now retail services delivery manager. So everything is changing with the times as well. The other thing about having, excuse me while I have a sip of water, but another thing is to make sure that your programs are fair and ethical. If any of you are charging cash advance rates, balance transfer fees, if you're upcharging the foreign transaction fees, if your late payment is more than $25, you're doing it all wrong. And I'm going to again show you how. You've got to have a willingness to take risk. We're going to go over credit lines. The average credit line in the credit union industry for a credit card is less than $5,000. And you know what? In order to have a truly profitable program, your average balance needs to be at least 2,600. You're never going to get to 2,600 with an average line of less than 5,000. And it is okay to have charge-offs going up to 2%. And when I do analyses for credit unions, when I see their charge-off ratios are less than 1% or less than a half a percent, then I see they've got low lines. And then I start to say, why are you even in this business? I can assure you, if you've got the proper underwriting criteria in place, you're going to have charge-offs, and not to focus necessarily on the dollar amount. When we get to the expenses and even in more detail on the income and expense session next week, we're going to get into the detail as to why it is okay to go up to 2%. Oh, question. What is a recommended criteria for determining a revolver versus a transactor? I'm not sure I understand the question, because basically you've got two kinds of card holders, and we're going to get into this in the marketing section and your product structure. It doesn't matter if you're a millennial, if you're in your 50s like me, if you're a senior citizen like my mom. Bottom line is you either transact or you revolve. And there should not be all of these different segments to complicate the heck out of marketing. Transactors would be considered those cardholders that pay their balance off in full every month. A lot of credit unions, well, we'll get to the lending later. The revolvers are the ones that you really, really want. They generate the finance charge income. And when we go into the profitability model, where 70% of your revenue should be coming from finance charges, interchange income is important, but it is not nearly as crucial on the credit program as it is on debit. On debit, it's basically your only income. And I get tired when I hear processors and reward providers saying, well, we're going to increase your interchange, we're going to increase your usage. It is important, but interchange only represents 15% of your overall credit card program revenue. And we really want to focus on that 70%, which is bringing in the balances. We cannot compete with the banks as far as usage because credit unions don't want to be giving the strong lines. They don't want to be giving $15, $20, $25,000 credit lines. Banks have a higher charge-off ratio. They will go 6, 7, 8%, and they expect to have 6, 7, 8%, whereas credit unions were more conservative. We've got the lower lines, and oh my gosh, if we go over 2%, what's going to happen? So I don't know if that answered your question. You can say yes or no, and we'll go from there. Hold on, I'm trying to advance the slide. Here we go. Here are the mistakes is lack of ongoing program management and measurement. Again, no ownership of the card function. Your invoices, we're going to touch on the invoices and what you're paying your processor. How often do you look at, or accounting will look at the bottom line and say, oh, it's pretty much the same as it was last month. Yeah, we'll go ahead and, okay it. It's not as though you can stop it anyway. It's all ACH. Lack of contract review and renegotiation. Never go on an auto renew contract, and don't think that you're immune from it, because a $1 billion client of mine was on the same contract with one of these processors paying 1992 prices until 2017. So if you're new to the credit union, or it was established, the card program was set up before your time, find the contract, because we don't want those auto renews anymore. We're going to talk about there's been no updating or reviewing of the parameters and the system settings, and what I'm talking about here, because I just want to dive right into this. And this applies to debit and credit. It's come to my attention through doing numerous analyses for credit unions that, guess what? The reissue criteria for credit and debit cards has never been updated. And why is this important? If you are not careful and you don't have somebody managing the reissues of your card stock, your members, you're going to be sending out a lot of cards and renewing a lot of cards to people who never even activated them via the card activation system or any other means, just inactive accounts in the first place. And the reason I know this like the back of my hand with all the parameters, no matter who your processor is you need to ensure that one of the criteria when it comes time to reissue is date of last activity. Because no joke, I was working with a client, I looked at the parameters they had with the processor, and the date of the inactive date was 99 months. So, and that was the default. For those of you that have been through the process of filling out one of those technical summaries when you're setting up a program, you get just in your face all of these parameters. You get to the point, well, what does everybody else do? Or the processor will say, well, we'll put in the default. Well, we don't want your default if your default is 99 months of inactivity before we reissue your card. So basically what this means, processors make all their money on accounts, cards, getting the plastics out. And it's just a oversight, and I want everybody to be reviewing your system parameters. There's more to review. We'll get into that as we go on. No offense to the CFOs out there, but often there's an overreaction to charge-offs, delinquencies, reward redemptions. I'm going to get into those expenses as well. And just to start off, your top 2 processing expenses for cards are going to be charge-offs and your card processor. That represents up to 60% of a credit union's processing expenses for a credit card program. Reward redemptions, guess what? Those should be less than 15%. So even if you see a dollar amount, gee, it's over $1 million in redemptions we had this year. The reality is when you compare it to all of the expenses and rank them, it is just, I don't want to say a small portion, it's a chunk, but it's not nearly as much as sometimes people overreact to. And the reason that I point this out, again, no offense to CFOs and everything, because your responsibility is to manage the obviously the finance of the credit union. But what if I told you that there are parameter settings with your late fees and there are other ways you can actually increase your income without increasing the fees to the member? That is what I'm all about, is making sure your program is well run, like a fine oiled machine, that you can be offering very low rates, minimal fees, and still be kicking butt with profitability. Weak website presence. I've got some samples in the presentation, and the outdated fee structures. These are all things that are costing you money. And I don't mean by adding new fees. All right, question. When you're determining average credit card balances as a benchmark, are you comparing balances to active accounts or the entire population? That is such a great question. And I think that person, whoever asked that, might have been at a school. Okay, let me explain. This is going to get fun. The statistics you see from Visa, MasterCard, Radden, I used to work at Radden, by the way, Radden, Callahan, whenever they are talking about average balances, average credit lines, uh, they're not accurate. And it's not that they're not putting out inaccurate data. It is the reporting that's coming in from credit unions. Let me explain. Going back to why I say you should measure your success and your goals on percentage of total loans, I will tell you, especially if you're in a full service environment, that 40 to 50% of your credit card database is statused, lost, closed, stolen, blocked for whatever reason. Now, there's a number of reasons that, let's say you've got 10,000 accounts on file. You may only have 5,000 that are active. You really need to focus on that active number. Now, if you don't have a card processing manager, champion, product owner, what happens? The processors certainly do quarterly purges. Okay, but the trick is an account will only purge off the system, also meaning you won't be paying for it anymore, if it meets certain criteria. And one of them is the account expiration date must have passed. There can be no activity for a year. So I'm going to throw out an example right now. It's 2019. I call into my credit union and my current card has an expiration date of 2022. I say I lost my card. They block my original card. They issue me a new card. That old card that expires in 2022 is going to stay on the system. It's going to stay in your total accounts on file. And bear with me. How are average credit lines determined? By accounts on file. How are average balances determined in the industry? By accounts on file. Ondine's method is I don't, it depends on the client, but I do recommend that you break down your statistics in three ways. One would be by active accounts, one would be all accounts, and then the last one will be accounts with balances, because that one is especially useful for the credit line increase criteria. I have a question. Is anybody bored? Because I may pop in, I want to show you the spreadsheet that I use. Are you guys interested in seeing a spreadsheet quickly? Tim would like to. um, pull up the sample data sheet. Okay, does everyone see this on the board? I want to show you, and I'm very happy to send this template to everybody. I have one of these for every processor. This is where I put together a credit union's portfolio analysis. And I want you to look, basically, this credit union had 5 programs. We've got some numbers here at the top from NCUA. The reason I'm showing this to you now is I want to give you an example. Look over here in column P. This credit union had 17,814 accounts on file. Look at this line, gross active. And gross active is a term used with some of the processors, is 13,123. This term debit active is their true active rate. This credit union, 1.5 billion in assets, only 8,749 out of 17,000 accounts actually generated a transaction. This is not unique. I keep looking over here. This is not unique. I see this with virtually every client I work with and basically all the attendees at my school. It is very, very common. So back to the question about doing your averages, this is where I want to point out. Here, for example, we've got total balances, 35.7 million. And here I break it down. It's 3206 for accounts with balances, but it's 2006 for all accounts. Because if you're comparing yourself to Visa, industry stats, whatever, they're using all accounts. Same with the average credit lines and the whole bit. So I hope that answers your question. All of you can have this sheet. It's in the handouts. It's a sample. And this sheet will measure everything for you from your profitability. You know, we get into the net income and all the late fees, and it's all on a nice handy dandy sheet. And everything in this sheet is what you should be measuring. If you're not measuring this correctly yet, don't worry about average number of transactions, average spend. None of that should matter until you've mastered the basics in this sheet. Accounts with finance charges, accounts carrying balances, credit line utilization ratio. Going through all that within this webinar, so stay tuned. Those of you that have been to my schools, you have that. Am I doing this right, Elliot?
Just click here.
Click on the black. There we go. Um, okay, so here, key profitability numbers. I cannot reiterate enough that money is made on card loan balances. 70% of your card program revenue needs to be coming from finance charge income. That is why you cannot structure your program like a bank. We do not base profitability the same way. Total number of accounts and penetration are arbitrary numbers and basically costing you more money with the processors, because especially in a full service environment, many of you will be paying 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different fees for every account on file, regardless if it is active, closed, status, whatever it may be. And continue to base goals on what makes your credit union money. This is another high, what's the word I'm looking for it? High level number. We'll be going into more detail in the next webinar. But you want to make sure that your card program is making an annual net income per account of at least $75. The reality is the top performing credit unions with the strong credit lines, strong balances, are blowing this out of the water. They're making $200 to $300 in annual net income per account. after charge-offs, after reward redemptions. Very, very profitable. Um, and I can vouch for this because I've been doing it for 16 years and I've got all these analyses to back it up. When you calculate a card program's profitability, you do it individually. If you are one of those credit unions that still have 6 programs out there or want to be everything to every member, that sheet I just showed you will show you which programs are bringing in money and which programs are not. The other thing about that sheet I just showed you is if marketing does not understand, I'll call it the card data sheet or the worksheet. If marketing does not understand that sheet, they have no business marketing credit cards. The worst thing you want to do is to be putting out a balance transfer campaign or some type of balance acquisition campaign only to find your credit utilization ratio is over 50%. So no one can take advantage of that. And it's not an insult to marketers. They're very, very creative, but you need the analytical people like me, like you, the people who do the spreadsheets. That spreadsheet I just showed you will tell you everything you need to know about your program and which programs need what type of promotion. So here we go with your credit card program income. And again, when I put this up here and when I teach this at my schools, keep in mind this is for the entire portfolio. So it's going to take into account perhaps your secured program, your rewards program, and your non-rewards program. But overall, it needs to be at 70% finance charge, 15% interchange, and 15% fees. In all honesty, most credit unions don't get to 15% of fees. Why? Because they're not collecting most of them. That's coming up. That's the other thing I want the CFOs to know. Um, don't be so quick to add fees or increase fees unless you know you're collecting everything that's already being disclosed. I need you to check for questions if they come in. This is something really cool too. Your interchange income. How many or how often do we really question what the interchange income is that we receive? The majority of times it comes through the processor, and that is a planned method, not ideally the best. But we just take for granted that whatever interchange they tell us, well, then that's what we get. So in my schools, and I'm going to tell you as well, you need to audit your interchange and take a specific time period, whether it be a year end, 1 month, one program, and you want to take the interchange for that program and divide it by the net sales. Now, the net sales being sales less returns, less adjustments. You do not include cash advances. And for those of you that received the manual, all of this is in the manual as well. And you're going to take the interchange and divide it by the net sales. You should come up with a ratio between 167 and 177. If you don't, you need to start questioning, am I really getting all my interchange? Processors will swear up and down, left and right, yes, you're getting everything. But what people don't realize, number one, if you're with FIS or WorldPay, interchange appears on your invoice, has no place on an invoice, but it appears on the invoice because they want it to appear that your interchange is offsetting your expenses. Wherever you see your interchange, you need to pay attention to the line item description. And in the majority of cases, if not all, it will say net interchange. This is my argument, and I argue with all the processors when they're sitting in the back of the room at my sessions. We as credit unions are managing our members' money. Don't give us a net number. And the answer is, oh, well, we just take the fees out for you so you don't have to work. No, 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 no. We want to book the gross, we want to book the fees, and we will come up with the net. So what I encourage everybody to do is don't contact your processor for this. Contact Visa or MasterCard. And again, use the same time period and say, can you let me know? And I think you can do this Visa online. They told me last week. Find out what your interchange is according to their records and compare it with what's coming through on the processor invoices. Um, and I'm not here to dig at processors that have been doing business like this for years. They are all supporters of mine, but it really comes down to the basics and the ethics. Where credit unions, this is your members' money. Maybe you don't care if it's net versus gross. I do, and I think we have an obligation to go further with that. Um, I'm going to touch on Visa and MasterCard again in a few minutes, so bear with me. I want to touch on expenses. Now, what should you be paying processors on an annual basis? There was no good way to figure this out, but about 10 years ago, I came up with um, a number that actually holds true to this day, that it should not be costing you in processing expense more than $30 to $35 per account on file. You may be surprised at what you're paying. Some of the larger credit unions, you can expect that number to be closer $23 to $28. But what I suggest everybody do is get from accounting everything just for credit that you paid to your processor last year. If you're in-house, you have to include statements, postage, cardholder service, chargebacks, um, anything related to the card program. You take those expenses for the entire year, divide it by the average accounts on file for the entire year, and you want to make sure that number is between 30 and 35. Now, sometimes it's going to be higher, and sometimes it's in your control, and sometimes it's not. Some examples: if you do reward programs, if you do advisory services, if you do promotional campaigns, if some, oh, that's basically it. You may find that you're paying 60 to 70, but if you put all of this on a spreadsheet and then extract, for example, rewards, I wouldn't extract the other things, but include that in your annual expense per account on file, because when we get to the profitability section, you may find yourself in a situation where you've got to cut back. The other reason you may be above $30 to $35 is because you got a bum deal. And many of you, before your time, perhaps the credit union got a $2 million signing bonus or a $500,000 signing bonus, depending on your size. I've seen a lot more. But where that is manipulated is within the invoice. So if you got a huge signing bonus way back to go with a certain processor, I can guarantee you are paying for that in either the authorization fee or the transaction posting fee. Those are the two most manipulated line items when it comes to, adjusting contracts. Quick note for pass-through: your processing expense only, and that's if you're using Jack Henry or Visa DPS or even FIS pass-through, should be less than $10. But that is just the processing expense. It does not include, like I said, statements, postage, cardholder service, compliance, chargebacks, or fraud. If there's any questions, you can just...
Nothing right now.
Are you guys bored? Is everyone still here?
They're here.
Yes. Okay. I mentioned this earlier, your top program expenses, up to 60% of all will be in charge-offs and processing. 10 to 15% of all will be in reward redemption. The reason I point this out is I think everybody should have rewards. When I say that, it should not be on the entire portfolio. We'll get into that with the product design in a minute, but I want everybody to be okay with 2% charge-offs and know that that may be your top expense. I need to scoot.
Yeah, sorry. There's a couple more that came in.
Oh,
Questions.
let me get these questions. Hold on. Oh, hi, Sarah. Ashley, how often should credit unions be completing the worksheet? At a minimum, annually, because it has annual net income and annual profitability. When we get to the end of the session, or you can email me after, when I send you this sheet, if you want the sheet, email me. And then when I send you the sheet, I'll give you instructions and recommendations on what to track monthly versus what to track annually, because there are different things, and get your tracking system in place. That is another great question. Are active accounts defined by a transaction within the last 30, 90, or 120 days? Any report that I will do for a credit union or a spreadsheet, I always use year-end data. And because it's December 31st, and even in any of your reports, whether you're with Fiserv, FIS, whatever is on that month-end report is what was active during that month. So it will be a 1 month activation or active period. Now, having said that, there are two types of active rates. One is an account that actually generates a sale and or a cash advance. That's what I consider active. If you process on an FDR platform with PSCU, WorldPay, or Co-op Full Service, that is going to be what is deemed debit active accounts. Those are the accounts generating a sale or cash advance. And FIS people, I'll get to you in a minute. The gross active accounts on the FDR system may be a blocked account, maybe a delinquent account, maybe a stolen account that had a finance charge or a fee posting or some type of financial transaction. That is included in the gross active category. Now, when you get the fancy reports from the processors or their advisory services, I can guarantee you, because I've seen them, they're using that gross active number as your active rate, and it's not. Active, which I'm ultimately going to start calling usage, are those accounts that are generating a transaction at the end of the particular month of the report that you're looking at. So I hope that helps. This is going to differ from any activation campaigns where you will get some reports to show recent inactive, long-term inactive. But at least when you're looking at the year-end or a month-end report, it's going to be that month. The note I wanted to make for FIS clients, guess what? They don't have the definition of active broken out. Their definition of active, it's on the executive summary. It's called accounts billed, which means basically those accounts that received a statement, which is complete BS. It doesn't really tell us a whole lot. And I know a lot of credit unions that actually get charged off account statements generated and sent to the credit union. So just know that it's going to vary with each processor. Okay, now offering the right products. This is where I was saying,
Did we go too far?
I hope not.
Okay, no, sorry.
Okay, thank you for checking. Um, again, cardholders are either revolvers or transactors, and it's that simple. And all these darn segments that come up, it doesn't matter. The simpler you make your program, the easier it is to sell, the less confusing it is on your website. Very, very simple. We have revolvers and we have transactors. So with that, you should offer 3 programs max. And I'm going to test everybody here. So if you're going to the bathroom or something, stay, because I need you for this next poll. First of all, you should have a non-rewards program, which is rate driven, low rate, and yes, a fixed rate. And the Card Act does allow that. Don't go jumping all over me yet. Then we have rewards, which is transaction and variable rate. And then if it is in line with your membership, Then do a premium world or signature card. They don't work for every credit union. They do not work for every field of membership. And by no means do they offer the higher interchange that was so often promoted several years ago when they were pushing this. No more student cards, no more secured cards, no more starter cards, none of that. Remember when I said the average line is less than 5,000? How many of you are still offering credit cards with $500 limits, or you're doing secured cards with $500 limits? When you get my spreadsheet and you see those secured programs and those college programs, they're losing money. And I know when I worked at Baxter back in the 90s, when I was running their card programs, we gave $500 back then. It was a big deal to get a $500 Christmas loan. And these days, if somebody doesn't qualify for 1,000 or 1,500, don't even offer them a card, because when you're balancing the income, the expense, the risk, it doesn't work out. And the other thing about the secured cards, how many times do tellers or branches accidentally release the security? How many times has lending actually gone through to see if people now qualify for an unsecured line? They're just a mess, and it's a matter of, can you do 1,000, 1,500, and I've got some data to back that up in a moment. I do want, you've got to bear with me for a minute. We're going to do a poll. You can't go to the bathroom yet. Do the poll. Which one? It's not that one. Oh, do you score card holders at reissue? And be honest. While you're filling this out, let me give you a bit of advice here. All cards have an expiration date. The Card Act, when you look at it carefully, and trust me, banks have found loopholes around this as well. Read in my book, you'll see it. Within the Card Act, everything is referred to the term of the loan. There are credit unions out there who have not scored their cardholders since day one. And here we've got the CFO and finance, and they're all freaking out about managing our risk, managing our risk. Well, what happens if you haven't touched a cardholder in the past 10 years since the Card Act took place, but they've gone bankrupt or their score has changed? Now, I'm not going to blame all the credit unions for this. Let me see what the answers are. Do you score? No. 75, oops, 17%, and 8% do. Okay. I should have put this other poll in here. How many of you use loan liner disclosures? Loan liner, can't stand them. And I'll tell you why. And I've had arguments with them before. They are very conservative, and you can certainly score card holders at reissue. You can even choose not to reissue. Do you remember back in the days where it would say on the back of the plastic, we can close this account at any time? CUNA Loan Liner did the right thing, and they were adhering to the Card Act and went the most conservative way, and that's also when most credit unions went variable. If it is written in your disclosure that you will score them at reissue, and if any of you on the phone have been around as long as I have, hear me out. Back in the 90s, when I was at Baxter, and the majority of credit unions, let's face it, had fixed rates prior to the Card Act. And we would use that term of the expiration to let a member prove their worth or not prove their worth. And we would score at reissue. And guess what? If the member's rate increased, we would, quote, grandfather the balance at the old rate, and all new purchases would be at the new rate. Kind of sounds like the Card Act, doesn't it? And this is my point to so many credit unions is we were basically in compliance with the Card Act before it even came out, and everybody flipped out. When credit unions took variable rates away, uh, I, we lost a lot of our advantage because um, we never really had good reward programs. They've gotten much, much better, but back then they were pretty substandard. And so we counted on that fixed rate because let's face it, if you have a choice as a consumer between a fixed rate and a variable rate, and I know it's non-variable is the technical term, um, I don't know about you, I'd go with a fixed rate to be paying off balances. So back to my slide where I do no rewards and fixed rate. Now, about 4 years ago, I would poll everybody in my class who does fixed rate, who does variable. Hardly anybody did fixed rate. Now I'm happy to say that more than half of each session, there are credit unions that are offering one and the other. And typically the fixed rate is on the non-rewards, the variable is on the rewards. The reality is reward people, transactors, they don't really care about the rate. They care about the credit line anyway. So I just want to throw that out there that if you are not scoring, you're missing a great opportunity, and go back to your disclosure. And I'm finding many credit unions, for those who got the book, I wish there's only a couple that did not sign up for the whole series, but the samples of the good disclosures, everything are in that book. I just couldn't put everything on the webinar. Any questions come in? Okay. All right. Stop trying to mimic the bank cards. And these are some key statistics when I mentioned our profitability models are different. And I'm just drilling this into your head. 70% finance charge, 15% interchange, 15% fees. Banks don't really care about interest, maybe 25 to 30%. Their interchange and fees represent 70 to 80% of their entire profitability. Look at the cash advance fees. Go straight down that line. None of you should be charging cash advance fees or balance transfer fees. If you are, shame on you, and I'm going to show you a way to replace that income. Penalty rates, you should never be charging a penalty rate. Why? If the member is late and you up their rate, guess who's not going to reaffirm with their bankruptcy? It doesn't do anything for anybody, for somebody who can't pay, to increase their rate. The grace period, 25 to 27 days. Your late fee should not be more than $25. Your foreign transaction fee, you should not be upcharging that at all. Then you look at what the banks, that's why they have all these higher fees and higher rates. We're going to talk about plastics. I do an exercise at my school and we all pull out our plastics for show and tell. Who's got the ugliest card? And there's some ugly ones out there, and I'm sure there's some ugly ones on the call as well. You really need to take advantage. I mean, as evidenced by the Apple card, it's the physical card that's making a statement. This is one of my clients. We all know, well, it used to be Coors Credit Union, now it's on tap. This is on their website. Who wouldn't love a Blue Moon card or a Coors Light card? Then Firefighter Credit Union, NASA with the Galaxy. So if you've got something, invest in the plastic, and really these gray, dull cards with no shine, or some graphics are okay, but a lot of credit unions are using generic plastic. The options aren't very pretty. And I even have some clients that, if you're a small credit union, you don't have a design staff. Number one, I know FIS provides a design service for free. I'm not sure about the other processors, but some of my credit unions actually put a contest out to members. And there are a lot of artists out there, and who wouldn't love to partake in a contest and have a design the card. Okay, your fees. This is the magic number, 25. Not 27, not 29, not up to 35, a flat $25. And that is what it should be for your late payment. That is what it should be for your minimum payment. And that is what your return payment fee should be. That's all. 3. Um, this whole thing with up to, this is another, what do you call it? The blind leading the blind. And I'm not trying to insult anybody. When you see where it's up to $35, well, the first offense may be 25, but the second offense is 35. Why even play that game? Just make it a flat 25. And this is, I think, the confusion when the Card Act, everybody was getting their knickers in a knot and said, oh, we've got to comply. We were already in compliance. The minimum payment, I'm going to show you on the next slide. And my throat's getting dry. Do you have any drops? You're going to see on the next slide why, if there's any finance people out there, this might be a key to help you eliminate some unnecessary fees or find some missing fee income. But your minimum payment needs to be at least $25 and match the late payment. And then the return payment fee, I can guarantee more than 50% of you are not even collecting it. And I want everybody to pull out those wonderful loan liner disclosures. And how many of you still have a statement copy fee? How many of you still have a document copy fee? How many of you have an emergency card replacement fee for $165? And I hope you're getting my message. Are those loan liner disclosures, not only are they outdated, because everybody's online these days, I can guarantee you're probably not collecting those fees anyway because they're manual. I've got to take a Luden's drop, excuse me. Okay, now this is where I want everybody to do this test. I had a credit union last week that found $80,000 a year in this exercise. Now, if your minimum payment dollar amount on your program is less than the late payment, guess what? You're missing fee income because the Card Act prevents you from collecting more than the minimum payment as a late fee. So let's say your minimum payment is 20 or worse. What if it's 15? But your late payment is 25. For all these years, guess what? You're not collecting $25. You're collecting the 15 or the 20, whatever the minimum payment is. This can be a huge amount if you have that discrepancy within your portfolio. The other thing I want to mention about, and I think it's on the next slide. Yeah, the grace days on late payments. And I don't necessarily want to chew this. It's going to drive everybody nuts. Shoot. All right, well, the days are over of giving cardholders 10, 15, and even last week, somebody had a 30-day grace period before assessing a late fee. It should be 5 days or less. I like 5 days, depending on your region and everything else and how much income you need. If you need to reduce it, reduce it. But the more grace period days you have for the late payment, the higher your delinquency will be. But I have worked with credit unions who have doubled and tripled their late fee income just by manipulating that one number of days before the late payment is assessed. And oh, there was one other thing I wanted to say about that too. The number of days it's assessed. Oh, you need to do an audit on your fee income. And the way you do that is find out what your delinquency is. I'm going to tell you, we're in the month of September. Get the number of accounts that were delinquent the end of August. Find out the late fee income you collected and do an estimate and make sure you are collecting what your disclosure says you're collecting. The reason I bring this up, I've got a huge credit union in the Northwest they did a conversion from one of these processors to another. And I went in and I didn't go in, I do all of my analyses off site. But guess what? I found out that the average late fee they were collecting was $2.37, not 25. And guess what? The parameter setting at the processor, somebody accidentally input, instead of $25 for the late fee, $2.50. And this was going on for 3 years. Could they get all that late fee income back from the processor? No, because most contracts give you 3 to 6 months to find an error and report it. So everybody needs to do a late fee income audit. No more questions are coming in. I think everybody's gone to sleep. Over limit fees. I would much rather see credit unions do an opt-in over limit fee than to do the cash advance, balance transfer, check copy fees, all this other stuff. Um, the Card Act does allow you to do an over limit fee, but it has to be opt-in. And I suggest you do this fee, number one, only if you need the fee income or you're replacing perhaps cash advance or balance transfer fee income that you're going to eliminate, but only if you have a similar process for overdraft protection on checking accounts that your members are accustomed to opting in. Um, it's a great way to replace the ugly fees, and you can test what the potential income will be by finding out the number of accounts that were over limit in a particular month, multiplying it by 25, multiplying it by 12. And there you'll get your estimated annual fee income. So the most critical factor for affecting growth and profitability is credit lines. You understand by now the bulk of our income comes from balances, right? And finance charges. We can't get those strong balances if we don't have strong lines. And I'm not talking crazy. I'm not talking $20,000, $30,000 lines. I'm talking about your average portfolio overall. So it's going to take into account not the 500s, because you're going to get rid of that, but the thousands and the 10,000s. Your overall average should be a minimum of 7,500. You will never get an average balance of 2,600 unless you've got an average line of 7,500. How much education is going on with consumers where consumers are being told only use 30% of your line to keep your score up? Well, there you go. The same applies to us as well. The credit unions that I've worked with, the most profitable ones that are generating, 175, 200, $250 in annual net income, are those who have a strong average line across the entire portfolio from 7,500 to about 9,000. I think the largest average line for an entire portfolio that I've ever seen is 15,000. So you don't have to go crazy, but get them up there. I mean, 5,000 isn't going to do it. Now, if you're one of those credit unions that you have so many $500 lines, this is what I suggest you do. Identify all of those card holders and give them 100% line increase right away, if they qualify. So they go from 500 to 1,000. And just do a credit limit increase on those ones, those that are below 1,000. That's going to slowly bring your average up as well. You decide how you want to do it. You may say, Ondine, screw you, we're going to keep the secured cards and everything else. But it is ultimately affecting the overall profitability. Here we go again, average line, less than 5,000. This is everything I just said. And who wants to use a card with less than $5,000 on it? Okay. All right, this is going to get into the analysis a little bit more. And if your staff, again, going back to the need for a product owner, is not zeroing out credit lines on status blocked accounts, and perhaps in some cases delinquent or whatever the case may be. Guess what? When you go to determine your average credit line, not only are your number of accounts on file most likely off, but if your staff is not zeroing out credit lines on status accounts, then your overall average credit line is going to be off. And this is what I was going back to earlier about the industry numbers being off. If we're not reporting it right, they're not reporting it right. And you know what? We're not reporting it right in 90% of all cases. So check that all your credit lines are zeroed out on accounts that require it. A lot of credit unions neglect it, creates overinflated liability on NCUA, and distorts any portfolio analysis done by you or your processor. If the data is not good, nothing's going to work. And it all starts with the basics. Going back to average credit lines, and actually this is a misplaced slide, I apologize. I wanted to give you an idea, again from the ABA, but just to give you an idea what's out there. The average credit lines for new accounts, super prime over 10,300, prime 5653, subprime 2672, and we think we're getting somewhere with $500 lines. On all accounts here, you can see the average lines as well. Yes, they take more risk, and I'm not going to back up on what I was saying there earlier, but just to give you an idea what you may be competing with when it comes to lines. And it's also, some people will even say that lines are more important than anything else. They just don't want to be turned down. They want one card. They want all of the rewards. This is average credit card debt by income. And you know what? I didn't cite this. I took this out of my book. This is from ABA. No, it's not. It's from Penguin, like the bird. And they've got great credit card statistics out there. But I thought this would be interesting to show you the average credit card debt by the income range. And that's out there now. And I just thought this was really very, very interesting. I don't have this slide out there, but if you do me a favor and write it down, and these are Rex Johnson's recommended credit line. A and A plus should be up to 4 times the member's monthly gross income. B and C up to 2 times, and D and E up to 1 time. So write that down. And I'm sorry that slide's not in here. It's in your book if you got one. We have a question. How long should a lost stolen, great question. How long should a lost stolen card stay on the system? If you talk to collections, they'll keep it on there forever. Ideally, no more than 90 days. My gut is, and my experience tells me, the first time you go to do a database cleanup, you're going to have so many lost stolen accounts in there. If you want to play it safe, negotiate with collections and say, okay, I'll get rid of all lost stolen accounts prior to January 1st, 2019. Okay. But when you get into the groove of things, I would 90 days max. If you do need to go back for whatever reason, number one, the member has already been reissued a new card, then yeah, it might be a pain in the ass to pain in the butt to contact the processor and get the stuff you need, but it's not worth the expense, because we haven't even gotten to the expense yet, how much those are costing you to keep on the system. That's going to blow your mind. Okay, processing options. We went through this earlier, and I won't spend too much time on this unless people have a specific question. But you're either in-house or you're full service, and each model has its own strengths and weaknesses. And I just want to highlight some of them. If you're full service, basically that would be a PSCU, a WorldPay, FIS, co-op full service, which is the old TMG, and Fiserv. And they do everything for you: transactions, authorizations, statements, postage, compliance, fraud management, cardholder service, plastics marketing, and they have very, very, very good reporting. Then the modules with in-house, um, what is that in there? Forget that line. I'm sorry, that shouldn't be there. Oh, additional with full service, you also have the option of portfolio consulting, marketing materials, growth and development, all for a fee, compliance resources 24/7. And although full service may appear more expensive on the surface, when you add in all of the other ancillary items that in-house requires, they end up pretty much neck and neck. Now, I do know some arguments are, well, it integrates. And sometimes these decisions were made between processors and IT, and the card people were left out. Um, the biggest complaint I have about in-house is the reporting. If I send you this spreadsheet, or if you want this spreadsheet and I send it to you, trying to get the data is going to be a nightmare. And I know from experience, because coming to a school, everybody's got to bring the data, or when I do an analysis for these huge credit unions that are in house, even the billion-dollar credit unions have trouble getting the data. And we're talking payments by card type, fee by fee type and card type, and everything's lumped together. And it makes it very, very difficult to do a thorough analysis. I know a handful of credit unions who are on Scimitar that have this down pat. They pay dearly for it. It can work, but there's clearly advantages and disadvantages to both. So the in-house pass-through model, the credit card module is on the core processing system. All functions go through the core, including all the limitations on promotions and rates and things like that. Requires more internal credit union resources from IT, report writing, compliance, statements, postage, and the reporting is just horrendous. It really, really is. If they're going to be selling the modules, then they need to sell the reporting to back it up. Were there questions? All right. How are we on time?
It is almost 2:30.
Oh, wow. Okay. We're getting to the end here. Brand and membership, and I'm just going to briefly touch on this. You don't know how your program was set up, whoever owned it before you at the credit union. You, I encourage, I'm not going to say you need to know, I encourage everybody, and don't call your processor for this. You call Visa and you call MasterCard, and you want to find out what your affiliation is, and you want to find out if you're principal or affiliate. And I know there's probably all the people on this call who are saying, oh, we're principal, we're principal. Yeah, we are. Uh, I'm going to give you a story in a minute. Call MasterCard, call Visa, find out what level of membership you are. The reason being, this affects everything from interchange to whether or not you have a rep. Um, and you need to know what options are given to you. Way back when, and no sugarcoating this, I say this at the schools in front of the processors, each processor had an alignment, should we say, with certain brands. Now they will issue both, but I'll go through it with you. Co-op, MasterCard, TMG, MasterCard, FIS/CSCU Visa, PSCU Visa, uh, WorldPay MasterCard. So they would often try and push their clients into one of those own brands by saying, oh, we'll waive the fees, blah, blah, blah. Eh. And I don't care if you're a principal or an affiliate, but I think you need to know all the options. When you're a principal, interchange, you can bypass the processors for getting your interchange. You will have some additional responsibilities such as quarterly reporting, which is basically once you get my sheet, you're going to be tracking all of that anyway. Um, and and I just bottom line is I want you to know what your options are. I'm a strong believer. Credit unions You owe it to your members. You should own everything about your program. And so call them. These are the things you want to find out. What's your current licensing agreement? Do you even have one? What is your membership level? And how is your interchange paid? And that is also, if you're a principal, guess what? You'll be able to audit your interchange to the penny every month. If you're an affiliate or an associate, you may not be able to. The reason I tell credit unions to call Visa and MasterCard directly, one of my near and dear clients, $3 billion credit union in the Southwest, and they were processing with a processor. And for years, I could tell from their invoice, I said, you're too big to be an affiliate or an affiliate of MasterCard. Ondine, no, we are a principal. We've verified with our processor, we are principal. And I do an analysis for them every single year. Well, 5 years later, I had enough. I said, you are not. I'm thinking, I hope I'm right. I hope I'm right. So we get on the phone and I called MasterCard and in the office on site at the credit union and asked MasterCard, who has this been licensed to? And do you know what the answer was? It was licensed to Fifth Third Bank. Now, Fifth Third Bank at the time was part of Town North Bank, which was Vantiv, WorldPay, the whole thing. So yeah, your processor may tell you till they're red in the face or blue in the face or whatever that you are a certain type. Just do what you need to do and find out what you are. And then you can talk to them directly and say, hey, Visa, what are the benefits of this versus that? Sometimes they're in bed with the processors. You got to be careful. These are the other things you want to find out. Um, who owns it? I said this, principal or affiliate. It's more effective for interchange verification. And plus, the other thing, when you are direct with Visa or MasterCard, instead of the Visa MasterCard charges showing up on your invoice as a line item that you just assume, oh, if they say it's $20,000, it must be, you'll get your own invoice from Visa and MasterCard. And trust me, there's a lot of cost savings in those ones as well. I want to make sure everybody has your own phone number on the back of the plastic. And this is especially important for those of you that may process via PSCU co-op that charge by the phone call. You want to make sure that all of your phone calls are coming to the credit union and then you route them when the time becomes. We'll go more into this next week with the expense webinar, but make sure, I recommend you put your phone number on the plastic. Portfolio analysis, garbage in, garbage out. Three components to a thorough analysis. It's more than just a portfolio analysis. We've got to look at your income, make sure you're not missing any, and expenses, and making sure that you are saving. My spreadsheet that I'm going to send you accomplishes all three of those things in one sheet. Reminder on the goals, no more penetration goals, focus it on balances. Aim for 10% of your total loans. And I'm not saying you'll get to 10% in 1 year, but you can see what 10% would bring you to and then spread that out over 2 to 3 years. I've gone through this already, which is why we're kind of, I think, we're not really behind. I just mentioned a lot of this earlier. Please remember that total accounts, total credit lines, and active accounts are ambiguous numbers. Total accounts on file is the key denominator for any portfolio ratios. And if that number is overinflated with lost, stolen, status, blocked, closed, charged off accounts, everything's going to be off. If you do find that 40% of your portfolio consists of debt accounts, don't beat the person up in the room that's managing the program. This happens all the time. It is a matter of everybody's plate is full, they were not properly trained, the processor's not giving advice on how to do this. But this is a listing of everything that typically is within the database, and this applies to debit as well. If your credit is bad, I can assure you your debit portfolio will be 2, 3, 4 times worse. Be proactive in doing your purges, and I mentioned this earlier. Yeah, I thought I was at an aha moment, but no. Um, this is just reiterating what I said earlier, that the processors, they will say, oh, we'll purge it, we'll purge it. Yeah, they will. After account expiration and 12 months without activity. The active accounts, this was asked earlier, they are various definitions. You really have to check with your processor, but I think I covered all of them earlier. Um, I consider true active is creating a sale or cash advance in that particular month. Now, in active accounts tends to be a dumping ground within that, and this is why marketing just can't go off what some um, processor analysis says. You know, they'll say, oh, you've got a 45% inactive rate. Well, yeah, but the reality is 30% of those are blocked. So is an activation campaign really the right thing to do? And so with your inactive accounts, you're going to want to break that down further into the true inactive versus the status, which are delinquent, lost, stolen, deceased, versus accounts with zero balances, versus accounts not activated, versus charged off accounts. All of these accounts are being included in your total accounts on file, screwing up all of your ratios. This is big. I mentioned this earlier. Um, to review your most recent reissue criteria. And if there is not a date of last activity within that criteria, put one. And if it is in there and it's 99 months, change it. And I recommend 12 months. If somebody hasn't used your card in 12 months, I wouldn't reissue them. And that is something else you can add to your new disclosures, not the ones that are very generic and limiting as to what you can do. This is one of my favorite things, and I created this numerous years ago. And how often do you look at your financials and it's like, oh, great, card loans are up, or they're down, or great, we're up 2 or 3%. Do you really know how you grew? Because sometimes you're not growing the way you think you're growing. What I want to show you here, this is a screenshot of the spreadsheet that I showed you earlier, and you have a handout. There is a section called cardholder activity. This is one of the things you want to track every month because this will be negative January, February, and March without fail, unless you have your balance transfer promo. Somebody asked me the best time to do balance transfer promos. Somebody also asked me, what do I think about 0%? But here we've got a credit union with a platinum rewards and a no reward program. You see on row 83, the cardholder volume for the entire year for the platinum rewards was 7.1 million. Payments exceeded sales by 437,000. It's not a good situation to be in. But we add in the finance charge and fee income, which become part of the outstandings. Well, guess what? That portfolio had no growth. Go to the no reward program. Payments exceeded sales by only $1,400. But guess what? Finance charge and fee income added back in shows the growth of 267,000. So in this particular instance, the no rewards program grew, the platinum rewards did not. Overall, the card program grew, but does the executive team really know that you really didn't grow by new loans? It's just kind of churning inside. This is one I suggest you track each and every month. It will be negative. The only time that you do a balance transfer promo, only time, is January through March. Never make it ongoing for all new accounts. There has to be a sense of urgency. And this sheet shows why it should be Q1 every year because payments will always exceed sales. So if you want to retain what you hung on or what you accumulated over the holidays, you're going to want to offset those payments first quarter with the balance transfers. Now, with the balance transfers, you do, or those promos, you give cardholders 30 days to 3 months to sign up. Sign up by March 31st and we will give you a rate of 3.9 until December 31st of 2020. You know what's nice about that for finance is all the rates will reset at the end of the year. You're not going to have these rates out there for, all these different buckets. I can explain more. I want to move on at the moment unless there are questions. No questions? Everyone still here? Did people leave?
No.
Oh, good, 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 good. Um, so again, if your card portfolio average line is below 5,000, and more importantly, if your card utilization ratio is higher than 35%, and marketing is out there trying to grow balances, they're not going to be able to grow balances until that credit line increase goes through. Tips for marketers: test them. Say, hey, is our interchange at least for 15% of our card program revenue? If not, guess what? We need usage. Is finance charge income at least 70%? If not, guess what? We need balances. Are there excess credit lines in your calculations or the MCIF system if you're using one? Excuse me. And how has your portfolio grown? Marketing needs to understand this, and also your true active rate, and that will go for the inactive rate as well. More tips for marketers. Does not have to be complicated. We don't have to justify their existence. It can be very, very simple. They need to know the income and profitability of the card program. They need to know the key metrics, the good and the bad. It's all about timing, having a competitive product, and 4 very simple segments. You've got your active, inactive, revolvers, and transactors. Don't waste your money with millennial cards, senior cards, household cards, any of that. The effective marketing cycles. The only time, if you've got a limited budget, to be doing promos, January through March should be earmarked for credit cards and credit card balances for the entire credit union. Then you can do all your auto loan and stuff in April. But January through March, again, to offset the payments. The rest of the year, honestly, you can skate by. You could do usage campaigns for the summer, do a credit line increase review. July through September, you could go do back to school. Again, the most important things to do in those time frames is the credit line increase, make sure everybody has money to spend, or you do double point promotions or triple point promotions, whole host of ideas. And October through December is usage, and you got to do the credit line check again. So this is the bare minimum, one promo first quarter every year. Okay, now how's your website? Don't hide it under loans. Give it its own tab. List card types and descriptions. Picture of plastic. Online application and approval. And for those of you that received a book, you go to that website section and you will see there are credit unions that are still saying, fill out this form and we will mail you an application. No joke. 24-hour lending app, online account access, online balance transfers, online line increases, and the Schumer box. Let me tell you about the Schumer box. 50, oh, not yet, hold on. PSECU, this is in my book. It's a great sample of their website. 2 cards, and you know what? They list the features, and it's cut off here, but you can see it's got 2 columns. Credit or cardholders, members don't want to be scrolling through text. They're used to the visual, what they can see on their screen. I like this one too. This is University Federal Credit Union. They offer 4 programs, but it's kind of like a bank card where it has the highlights and then it says details. You don't have to be scrolling all the way through. Oh, quick question. Are rate reduction promos or bonus promos better? It depends what you need, and you will find out what you need when you do a complete analysis. Hopefully you'll get my sheet, Ashley. Um, but you'll be able to see which programs might need which. And if you need usage, if you need interchange, I would do a point promo. If you need balances, then do the rate promo. So one promo will not work for an entire program. Everybody will have its own, and I hope that helps. So this one's University Credit Union. Now we're getting to the Schumer box. This is not a, you're going to think I hate marketers. I don't. But some people try and get very creative about what is mandated. There is no working around the Schumer box. For those of you who don't know, it's named after Chuck Schumer, one of those senators. And most credit unions are not in compliance with this. It needs to be clearly visible in any promotional material, which means online. It cannot be once you start applying. It has to be on your credit card page. It doesn't, let me clarify, a link needs to be on your credit card page to take you to the Schumer box. You can't find out about the rates and fees mid-application. This does not replace the credit card terms and conditions, but more importantly, this is what a Schumer box looks like. This is pen-fed. And if yours does not look like this, and when I mean like this, you see how the rates are a certain font and bold and a certain type and different things, that's all part of what is required. If you didn't get one of my books, Google Schumer box, go to Wikipedia. It will tell you what it needs to look like. But I wanted everybody check out what you have. And again, there needs to be a link on where you are advertising this. This is not, you can make the box any which way you want. This next section, and we'll just kind of breeze through this. Everybody's going to get a recording of this, and I think print out of slides. I can send you the slides as well. You really need, I hope you realize by now that every credit union really needs to have somebody managing their card program. If you're not big enough, then you can combine credit and debit. And then you are going to cross over in several departments: accounting, collections, finance, operations, marketing. Everybody has a piece in the pie, but when you've got one product owner or one product area, be it operations or VP of lending or finance, the buck stops there. They will make the final decisions. You know, of course, lending has to do the underwriting. Um, but at some point it's got to stop because there's too many opinions on what works and what doesn't. I know what works. Um, I'm now seeing, instead of a card product owner, it's going to payment to retail delivery product owner. You've got all of the supporting departments, the member touch points. And I'm going to close out these next few pages. These are the top 10 tips. We've got the goals. You want 10 to 15% of total loans. Your growth, you want to aim 9 to 12% annually. The income allocations are critical. If you don't track that, find out where you are by program. Your interchange, 167 to 172 of net sales. With the Post Card Act, ensure the minimum payment is equivalent to the late payment. If not, you are missing a boatload of fee income. BIN affiliation, find out who owns your BIN, whether you're an affiliate or principal. Check directly with Visa or MasterCard, not your processor. If you don't have a relationship with Visa or MasterCard, you should. I know Visa gives a rep to everybody, no matter what your level is. MasterCard is a little more picky. I think you've got to be a principal. Your processing expense, these are reminders: 30 to 35 per account on file, full service, 18 to 22. That's incorrect, that 18 to 22. Where did I go? How do I back up? Last viewed. That 18 to 22 is incorrect. Your processing alone should be less than $10. Your annual net income per total account at a very minimum should be 75. Typically a lot higher than that. Credit line management needs to be, your credit line needs to be greater than 7,500, your average balance greater than 2,600, your line utilization ratio less than 30. And I strongly encourage you to offer at least fixed rate option. If you don't believe me, I'll put together a list of credit unions that have fixed rates. And here's a bit of a to-do list. Verify your BIN ownership. Regarding your income, you want to do an interchange audit. You want to do the late fee minimum payment audit. And then if you have excessive fees beyond the $325 fees, there may be ways to replace them. Your account database, you want to go through that, find out what's active, what's not active, what's status, what's closed. Find out accounts not activated. Those are accounts that were issued but not activated via the card activation system. Check and audit your reissue criteria. Make sure you're not reissuing to cards that never activated them in the first place. Check at your disclosures. Do you have limitations like scoring cardholders a basic function of risk? Is it in your disclosure? If it's not, you may want to think of updating it, as well as all the old fees on there that you're likely not even collecting: statement copy fees, return payment fees. The reissues, make sure that you put in your new disclosures, or if it's in your current disclosures, that you've got the right to close the account if they behave badly. This very close to last slide is, if you've got your iPhone, you should take a picture of this, might be easier. But these are all the key ratios where your numbers should be. This is what should be measured every month. And I do believe that's it. I wonder, can anybody dial in? Does anyone have any other questions? I think last time we were able to speak to people live. I think we'll work on that for next week's session. Next week we're doing income and expense. So it'd be fun to have people to actually call in. We don't have to see your face. I bet we could see your face, but
As long as they have a microphone, we can open their microphone and you can chat with them.
awesome. Well, does anybody have any questions? Did you say that you were going to? Yes, I will send the PowerPoint to everybody. If you promise not to share, because I've had too many consultants per se steal my stuff over the years. But if you promise to keep it just with you. We do have this recorded. I'm not sure if it's automatically sent out or we'll have to manually send it out through GoToWebinar, but we'll get that out to everybody. And if you want a sheet, please email me. My email's on this slide. It's ondine@gocucards.org. And what else? I think that might be it. But I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was useful. I tried to take the highlights of 2.5 days and reduce it into an hour and a half. But we've got more coming up. So, and most of you are signed up for all three. So we'll kind of go through everything in a bit more detail. And with that, I feel bad saying goodbye. I can't hear from anybody. You're welcome, Ashley. Thank you. Kathy, thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Oh, Sarah, are you still there? Sarah, look what I'm drinking from. It's my razor cup. Ah. All right, everybody. Well, thank you. Hi, Tracy. I'm glad you're here. Oh, you're in Florida. I hope you're safe. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Ben. I bet you were bored. You've been to a class. Hi, Dawn. Okay, good. Well, Dawn, I hope you're safe in Florida. Tim, what time does my plane land? It's just about to land in a minute. Thank you, Ben. I always have fun with this, and I do next week, we'll have a way where we can talk to people. And too much going on with the school last week, and why I booked these in September is beyond me. I should have done them in October, but I was a little busy. So we'll be more prepared next week where we can interact and talk. But with that, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. Thank you so much for your support. I'm celebrating 17 years in business in November, and I couldn't do it without all of you. So thank you so much, and we will talk to you next week, most of you. Bye bye.